Challenge from Doge, where today we're spectating Overwatch again. This time we're spectating Salik, or Salik, or however it's pronounced. And they are a Gold 5 tank, and they post, "How do I position and strategize better as a tank?" I was playing a tank game, and I didn't know what I should be doing to win the game. I'm Gold 5, so expect a lot of shitty gameplay. Well, it's a good start. From rewatching the VODs, what they noticed, they say, is that in the first half of the game, they focused way too much on trying to kill the tank. In the second half, they tried to play Winston and D.Va to focus on killing squishies, which they think worked out better, but still didn't work. And in parts of the game, which is difficult to show without free cam, it felt like I was positioning myself way too far ahead of the team, while they wants to play further back, and you took too much damage, and never made anything happen. And he asks, as a tank, what should I do when my teammates are all playing longer range heroes? How do I control the space for our team? And should I have switched to a different hero? What am I doing correctly, and what should I be doing differently? Alright then, and this is PC. Okay, so there's so many things to say if I want to cover this whole game, so this time I might try and chop it up a bit and do bits at a time, so to speak. So, first of all, I just want to talk about your starting position. I'm playing this in slow motion right now, so there's something happening in the background instead of a still image, because I've been a bit bad about just freezing on a still image when I start. But let me just put it at half speed for a moment. So it looks like at first you're a little bit lost about where you want to go. Which in fairness, I can't just pin that entirely on you. Your DPS also look a little bit lost. Your supports look like the only people who really know where they want to be. They go straight to the high ground, which is exactly where they should be. The only problem with the high ground they're taking, potentially, is if they do have a Widowmaker who opens up that door, obviously this high ground is a bit sketchy because you might get a headshot. But even if that's the case, they can just walk over here, and they can still heal you from here. And then they're not in the line of sight of the Widow. So this is a good place to start. Now, the problem here is, as I say, you kind of don't know where you want to be. And I want to actually get on this straight away, because I mean the whole post is about how to position and strategize, and this might seem like a small thing, but I do think it's a bit iffy. If you started the game right here, then that would be pretty bad, because you would just give them this choke for free, and you don't want to do that. This choke is probably the best choke in the map, arguably, except maybe like last point, and if you give them this choke, they potentially could just run right through Hotel and sneak around your back. Now, in fairness, this is Gold 5, so I doubt they're going to do that. I doubt they are going to play competently enough to do that, but they could, and you should be wary of that. This choke, either way, is going to be the most valuable, whether you're in Bronze 5 or you're in Grandmaster 1, you know, or Champion or whatever. But here's the thing. You do realize, hang on a minute, I probably shouldn't be here. And you have the right idea, but the wrong execution with what happens next. And that's a consistent theme throughout this VOD. There's loads of points where I would say that you had the right idea, but you either did the right thing in a very, very poorly executed way, or the devil was in the details, where the general idea was right, but little things about what you did were really wrong. So you see your supports are there, and you're like, hang on a minute, I shouldn't be here. I need to protect the choke. So you walk up to the choke. Now, this is an example of what I mean, of like the right idea, the wrong execution. Can you take a guess as to what the problem is? Now, I'm going to call you out, fellow viewer, who clearly responded out loud to what I just said. Because if what you were going to say was, they're alone, then I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. That is not the problem. If anything, that's kind of on the DPS. I don't like the Cass. I kind of get this angle isn't terrible, but like, what's the Bastion doing? What are they thinking here? Ugh, don't like it. If anything, this is a misplay from the DPS that they're playing this far back. If anything, it is correct for Salik to be playing this far forward. So, what is the actual problem? The problem isn't that they're playing this far forward. It's that the supports can't see him. And because the supports can't see him, they've had to jump off high ground and now are playing low ground so they can get an angle on him because you went too far to the left. Now, that's an important distinction to keep in mind. I feel like when it comes to metal rank players, there's a lot of general knowledge they throw around, and I kind of hate how almost all the times it's applied in the wrong ways, where it's general knowledge that's generally true, but they completely remove context from it. And one of the worst ones is the whole idea that tanks play way too far forward, they feed all the time, and they need to stick with their team. I hate this, because it's not that they're wrong to say that tanks should stick with their team. They should, But they forget that just because you're far away doesn't mean you're not with your team. If you are far away, or not, well, as long as it's within reason, if you're kind of far away but your team can clearly see you, you are still, as far as I'm concerned, with your team. So if you right now started this match from here, and your supports can see you from high ground and you can still defend this choke, perfect. Perfect. Enemies can't shoot on you until they already get close enough that they're in your effective range. You can still get maximum heals. Cass can still pressure from this angle. Yeah, the enemies can sit here and no one can pressure them, but I mean, what are they going to do from here? They've got nothing to fire at. The only thing they could maybe do is they could make a run for here. And this would be a bit sketchy if they made a run for here and they snuck around here. But one, this would require a decent amount of coordination and awareness, which probably Gold 5 players don't have. And even so, what do they do when they get here? There's things they can do, but there's nothing that devastating immediately. It's not something you couldn't react to. So, as far as I'm concerned, your starting position as a Orisa on this map should basically always either be here, or it should be, like, here. And it's kind of awkward, because this is why it might seem like at first this is really nitpicky, because you are really close to that position. Like, both of these positions are like 2 steps away from where you're standing right now. You're standing right here. It doesn't look that bad, but really, when you zoom out, it kind of is. You force your supports off high ground now, which made them more vulnerable. You're also kind of alone here. You still don't have any DPS follow-up, which is partially the DPS's fault, but also partially your fault. And on top of that, what do you actually get by playing further to the left, where your supports can't see you? Well, you get the ability to see enemy spawn, but what do you do with that information? What do you do with that? Well, you can fire at them a little bit, only it's one Orisa firing against a full team of 5 right outside their spawn, and they have cover and you don't. They're always going to get more ult charge from shooting you than you're going to get from shooting them, and none of them are ever going to die, but you might die. You're not getting anything here. Now, there are 2 three really bad habits you have with Orisa. And most of them relate to your javelins. One bad habit you have that a lot of metal rank Orisas have is that they just press all their buttons. That they're too eager to press buttons, and they end up with no buttons left and then die. It sounds super simple, but genuinely, when you are Orisa, the number one skill you need to have is the ability to press your buttons as little as you can physically manage without dying. You want to be edging your buttons always, because the only way you become weak as a Orisa is either if you lose your healers or you lose your buttons. So long as you have either loads of heals or loads of buttons, you are an unkillable god until you run out of buttons, and then you're useless. You can't do anything. So you always want to be edging your buttons as hard as possible. Now, in fairness, you haven't used any buttons yet. That doesn't apply yet. That's more important later. But this is where we get to the spear ones. You've got 2 really bad spear habits. One of them is, I hate to accuse you this because I could be wrong, but like, it happens so many times this match, I'm kind of suspicious. It looks like you only ever speared when you saw the enemy Orisa spear. It's like you literally forgot that you had spear, and then you see the enemy Orisa use spear, and you're like, oh right, I have spear, and then you use it back, even if it's a really bad idea. So you see the enemy Orisa throw a spear, and you're like, oh, hang on a minute, that means I should throw a spear. And so you pull out your spear. And I don't really know what you think you're going to achieve with this spear. The Orisa is full HP, she still has Javelin Spin, she still has Fortify, she has 2 supports hard pocketing her. There's also DPS right here that this could potentially kill if you get lucky, that you're not aiming it at, you're instead aiming it at the Orisa. And it looks like you don't even know where the Orisa's going, so you don't know where to throw your Javelin, and you end up throwing it into a team of 3 people and perfectly throwing it under their legs and not hitting a single person. Now, I'm not going to grill you for the aim necessarily here in terms of pure getting the crosser to hit, but I am going to grill you for the fact that I think a lot of the reason why your aim is poor here is because you haven't thought this through beforehand. So, this is the last thing to do with spears that I've got to bring up. When you have a projectile weapons take time to reach their target. Hit scans, you just click, and if your mouse is on their head, you headshot immediately. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Projectile weapons, of course, they create bullets, they fly through the sky, and they take time to reach their target, and that means there's time for the target to move out of the way. Now, usually, most projectiles in this game are still so fast that, except at really long range, people don't have the fast enough reactions to move out of the way. But still, it does mean it's less predictable. You don't know where their body's necessarily going to be by the time your bullet arrives, which means you have to be shooting where they're going to be, not where they are. This still kind of applies with hit scans as well, just due to reaction time and like server delay and etc. But it applies way more strongly on projectile weapons for obvious reasons. Now I'm saying all this because not only is all of Orisa's weapons projectile, but her spear especially is a not super fast projectile. In other words, what it means is when you press the spear button, this is what I think you should do. I generally don't tend to give aim advice because for the most part I think that like aim is just something I don't want to grill you if you have bad aim. That's just something you get better at over time. But there's some things where it's not like a mechanical skill problem, it's a you're not thinking problem. And this one I would say is like a you're not thinking about it problem, where it's better if your crosshair is already placed on the target you want to hit with your spear, or at least close to them when you press the button, and then while Orisa's holding the spear and is about to throw it, you're thinking, okay, where's this guy most likely to go? And then you throw the spear where they're most likely to go. I know it sounds really basic, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because you don't do that. What instead happens here is that, just a second. Okay, so you kind of shoot thin air for a moment there. So the crosshair is on the Orisa. You lock the crosshair onto the Orisa, you got your spear ready, and then I'm not certain, but it looks like you decide, you kind of have that moment mid-throw where you realise, hang on a minute, why am I spearing a full health Orisa that has fortifying javelin spin? And it's good that you realise that's not very helpful, but the reaction with what you do here kind of makes things worse. Because you're trying to correct your mistake, once you've literally already put the javelin in your hand and you're already mid-throw, you don't have time to think things through, so you just kind of lob it in there, and you actually manage to get it perfectly in the middle here and catch no one. I think what you were trying to do is I think you realised, wait, this makes no sense, I should be hitting the Junkrat. I would argue the soldier would be even better, but I get the Junkrat's closer. And you try to redirect it to the Junkrat, but because you've been looking at the Orisa, not the Junkrat, you haven't been looking at the Junkrat. You have no idea where his movements are, so you don't know where to throw the spear, so you just kind of throw it in his general direction and it misses. And it's... Again, it's just a thing where, like, you need to... With a projectile weapon, you want to already have a read on where you think the enemy wants to go and what you think they want to do before you even throw it. And you want your crosshair to already be at least close to where they are before you do. You don't want to be doing mid-throw corrections because... Or at least, if you are going to do mid-throw corrections, it should be, like, you know, something where your crosshair starts at where they literally are right now and then moves to where they will be, rather than... I'm going to literally switch my target mid-javelin throw. If you can help it, that's not really the best. Now, if I remember correctly, yes, this moment is one of the few moments where I get to praise your play. Because you do something, actually, I would say quite smart here. I don't know how much of it is intentional, but either way, I gotta commend you. Because I think this is a situation where a lot of people would make the wrong play, at least certainly at this rank. Essentially, if I zoom out right now, I'm sure... Oh, sorry about that. I am sure you're painfully aware of the Junkrat and the Orisa coming this way. And so many people, I think, in this situation will be like, ah, threat! And then run into these people's faces, maybe get blown up by the Junkrat, not really achieve a whole bunch, and then they all just kind of collapse on everyone. But instead what you're doing is you're pressuring down here. And I actually like this. I like this quite a bit. Because what it means is their supports are now scared to cross over to help their Orisa. Because you're pressuring them. As well as that, their supports aren't healing Orisa because they're scared of you, so they're shooting you. And you still have line of sight to your support. I mean, right now they seem to be busy helping your Bastion, but still, you will still have line of sight to your support, so you still can get healed. And also, because these are squishies, you actually maybe have an outside chance of killing them. Still pretty unlikely, because it's a BAP and a Kiri that are both, like, going to be pocking each other with a soldier who could drop a healing field. It's not likely, but even still, just the fact that you are simply pressuring them means they can't cross over to help their tank, they can't spend resources to heal their tank, and they're now split into a 2 and a 3 rather than a whole clump of 5 that just runs you over. The only thing that's bad is I think you walk a little bit too deep here. You should be backing up here a little bit. But considering you're so low, considering your supports are still there, and considering you know your supports are about to be threatened by a Junkrat and the enemy Orisa. But even still, you do the right thing here. You force out Immortality Field, that's huge. You do barely get out of this alive. You probably could have gotten out of this a little bit smoother. It could have been a little bit less of a close call if you... Actually, no, I don't think you... Oh, no. Oh, yeah, that's what happens. Right, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, there's a couple little mistakes here, but the general idea here is pretty good. The fact that you pressured that angle to split the squishies from the rest of the team and cut the Orisa off from their healing was good. And it is what leads to the Orisa getting killed. This Orisa's health, they had so much time to heal her, but during that time, they didn't heal her at all because they were too busy using Immortality Field on themselves and shooting you because they were scared of you. But it's just that you shouldn't be walking this deep. Now you don't get heals, and you don't need to be this close. And then you still could have clutched it here if you kept backing up. You can still keep shooting the Orisa. I know obviously you want to shoot the Orisa to kill them, but keep backing up, keep backing up, keep backing up. But then unfortunately you press forward, which walks right into a Junkrat bomb and boom. You could have survived that if you backed up a bit, but either way, that's not too bad. That was pretty good in general. It's important to remember to think about when you're using your buttons, and this is a very, very helpful example, I think. Once again, you do the same trick of, oh, I got hit by a spear, that means I need to spear them back, even though it achieves nothing, doesn't really do anything. And then, I understand you getting caught by this Junkrat bomb. The bastion in your face made it hard to see, and you don't have time to react to it, boom, you get hit by Junkrat bomb. That's unfortunate. Now, you see the Junkrat is reloading over here, but you don't catch it in time, so you just press immediately Javelin Spin. You're at basically full health, and I believe your supports are right next to you. Well, right behind you, I mean. So let me just double check that. Yep, both of your supports are right behind you. You do not need to use Javelin Spin right now, and the fact that you use it means now, well, you don't have it, obviously. So you delete nothing with the Javelin Spin except like one bullet from the enemy Orisa, and then you back up. Now, this already wouldn't be great that you wasted your Javelin Spin, a valuable cooldown that you got to wait 8 seconds to get back, especially because of how dependent you are on cooldowns to survive as Orisa, but it wouldn't be the end of the world if you just stayed back now. But instead, you walk back out into the exact same spot the Junkrat was firing into before. The Junkrat can barely see you right now. Like, he's just kind of spamming in this general area and hoping that you just continue to stand here, and unfortunately, you fall for it. You keep standing here. And I get it with the first, well, I say it already, I think you really shouldn't be hit with the second bomb, but I get it. By the third bomb, though, you need to be thinking, hang on a minute, why am I standing here with no Javelin Spin if I know the Junkrat is just going to stand here and keep throwing bombs in this direction? Boom. That one even nearly caught you. Now, here's the other thing. This is a very, very rare instance where... Actually, it's not really that bad yet, but it's going to be bad in a moment. Almost always, when I talk about resource management, I'm talking about cooldowns or things like defense matrix, you know? It's very rare that ammo is the kind of thing, or heat, or whatever you want to call it, that like I would consider a resource that's being misused, because usually it regenerates so fast and so easily that managing it, while important to some extent, isn't the biggest issue in the world. But you're about to see how you being a bit too trigger happy and not thinking about managing your heat here, it kind of screws you. So I get it. You see a Kiriko, you see she's half health, you have window, you're trying to make use of the window. Uh-oh. And if you didn't have your gun overheated right now, maybe you can kill her here, because you have window right there. If you could just fire into that, maybe, and even if you can't kill her, maybe you can kill Bap, maybe you can kill Soldier, but no. Your gun's overheated, can't fire at all now. I'm going to argue you probably should have known this was coming. Not only because a couple moments before this you briefly check the hotel to see if they're running through, and they're not, which means that you're aware that they can run through hotel, and that's a threat you've got to be worried about. But that also because you see window here, you peek the corner, and you see no one but Kiriko. Where do you think they've gone? Like, I know that we can see through walls, so we get to cheat, but on top of that, like, even if you couldn't see through walls, like, where are they going to run realistically? They've already committed to ults to this team fight. They don't want to give up on this team fight. They're not going to walk back to spawn. They're going to run through hotel. So the second you see that Kiriko on their own, you should be thinking, oh shit, where did everyone else go? They must be running through hotel. Which of course they are. And you might say maybe that your Anna should be sleep darting this Orisa before she gets away with this, but she actually already used sleep dart in the middle of the team fight, and you woke them up immediately. Now, in fairness, you didn't really have much time to react, but even still, like, unfortunate circumstances like that lead to some very bad outcomes. And then as well as that, unfortunately, because you've walked too far out to try and look at this Kiri, you're now completely separated from your team. You could still salvage this if you made a run for the doorway behind you, but it takes a bit too long. In fact, your Bat gets killed for trying to bail you out. He had high ground earlier, he was sitting on the high ground and he gives it up to help you and he ends up dying for it. So yeah, it is pretty rough there, but you definitely could do a little bit more if you were a bit more aware of the fact that, you know, they were going to... The awkward thing is actually, if I go back a bit, if I remember right, a little bit further than that, when the window gets dropped... Okay, I'm confused by this. You go into the corner first. You have basically full health, you have all your buttons, you have supports behind you. This is a really bad idea. You're not using the window. But this is where you'd want to be once they arrive out of hotel. And ironically enough, then when they're coming through hotel, you do the opposite and you realize, oh, okay, I should be here if I want to use the window, but now it's too late. Now there's no one there to shoot. So you reverse this order of operations. If you first peek the window from this side to fire down this angle, and then when you see people leaving, you check hotel to make sure they don't run through, you're good. But you did it in the wrong order. You checked hotel before anyone had a chance to run through it, and it's like, at least being charitable, that's what I hope you were doing. And it's like, okay, no one's coming through. And then it's like, oh, peek, oh, they got me. Anyway. This situation is a pretty unfortunate circumstance. At this point, I see what you're doing. You're 91 to ult, you want your ult, and you realise that you're 1v5. So, you think you're doing something smart here, and the worst part is you aren't doing something dumb, but it has some unforeseen consequences. You go for a little bit of poke damage, you know, just scare them a little bit, get some ult charge, and then you back out. It's fair, you know, you got cover, you got a health pack there, your support's right there, bat. This looks decent. But, can you guess what the problem I'm going to point out with this is? It might kind of look like a bunch of stuff just happened, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't good, but like, what could you have done? But this is what I'm going to say. And in fairness, this is where it gets to kind of a little bit more advanced map knowledge, so if you are a newer player, I kind of get it. So, to be fair, on all maps this is the case, but one thing that you probably heard of before that you don't want to happen to you in competitive is you don't want to get staggered. And just to be clear, being staggered is when, after a team fight, people didn't all die at the same time, and because people died at different times, people respawn at different times, and they arrive back in the fight at different times. And because they arrive back in the fight at different times, people start trickling in one at a time, and keep getting 1v5'd. As a result, you never get to regroup, and you never get to fight the enemies again. They all just keep running you over, and they won't stop running you over until you regroup. Now, there are some points in the map, in certain maps, that are more infamous than others for the ability for getting staggered to ruin your day. And when it comes to King's Row, the single worst point in the map to be staggered is this point. This second point, it's really easy to stay staggered. There's so many different tight corridors with no easy ways to get to each other from. It's really easy to end up scattered all in different places and to get picked off. As well as that, this second point is pretty quick to run through if you manage to get through uncontested, because you just get to run over everyone in your path. And they can reach the third point real quick. And so, if you're not careful, you can get completely bowled over on this second point without even getting a second team fight. So, the reason I'm telling you all this is because while you're peeking with this doorway and getting free ult charge, this is fine from a purely selfish perspective. This is fine from the perspective that you're not going to die doing it, you're correct in that, you are going to get your ultimate for doing it, you're correct in that, that's nice. But what you're not correct about, the thing that's wrong about it, is that you're kind of assuming, yeah, and I mean, my teammates aren't going to die because they're just going to position smartly and they're going to play it really safe and they're not going to poke like I am and now they're going to be fine. And in fairness, if your teammates were perfect, they would do that. They wouldn't play as far forward as you, they would realize that you can get away with poking them because you're a tank and they aren't. And, you know, you're playing it safe, and they would obviously take a backseat. They wouldn't do anything stupid. But remember, this is Gold 5. You can't really just expect your teammates to just be miraculously perfect. You're kind of selecting for teammates that are more likely to make stupid decisions. And while that isn't necessarily your fault, it is your fault if you could have done something to stop them from dying as a consequence of their stupid decisions, and you didn't do it. And, you know, that's basically what I think happened here, is that you made the correct decision from a purely selfish perspective of getting your ultimates and getting, you know, out alive, but because you did that, now your Bastion's dead. And again, that isn't necessarily your fault, it is more the Bastion's fault. The Bastion, I'm not going to lie, is being frankly an idiot here. I want you to watch this, to be fair. I'll get the heat off of you for a second to go laugh at this Bastion, because, okay. First of all, he's alone. Second of all, he has no idea where the enemies are. He doesn't know how many people he's peeking. He could be peeking the entire enemy team right now for all he knows. Third of all, he has no one on screen and he's pressing turret form. Fourth of all, then he sees, oh, there's someone I can shoot, and so he starts spraying at a Baptiste at a mile away, where he does no damage. And now he's just kind of wasted his most valuable button and is waiting for it to come back. He gets bailed out for his bat for a second, but Uh-oh, Orisa comes running through here. Who could have seen that one coming? Boom, dead. It is dumb that your Bastion did that, and it's not necessarily like you made that decision. Like, you didn't want your Bastion to do that, I get it. But at the end of the day, if you're already here, if you already are standing with your BAP and your Bastion rather than on this like weird side angle trying to get a little bit of extra ult charge, especially when Orisa's ultimate is one of the weakest ultimates in the entire game, you could have been in front of the Bastion right now, giving him a Javelin spin to save his life, but your Javelin spin's on cooldown because you used it to get back here faster. And now the Bastion dies. If your Javelin spin wasn't on cooldown, you could have saved his life, but it was on cooldown because you used it just to get back here faster because you split from your team when the most important thing right now is to not get staggered. As well as that, I'd just like to point out, this would be a good time to spear, and it would be obviously pointing it at the BAP, because even if the BAP jumps, then it'll just catch the Junkrat. Instead, yeah, we throw it at the Orisa. And another thing on the spear thing, obviously not only is trying to spear the Orisa here not the smartest, but also you throw it to the right, when the Orisa would only ever naturally move forward or left. Left to get healed, or forward to play aggressive. There's no reason for the Orisa to ever move right here, so throwing it to the right doesn't make sense. I know it's probably something that, I know obviously it's like you realize that watching it back, but I just want to point it out. You know, when you're throwing these spears, you don't want to just be thinking, I'm just going to throw it in a direction and hope they move that way. Obviously you want to be thinking, okay, what direction will they move? There's no logical world where that Orisa moves right there, so throwing it to the right doesn't really make sense. Whereas throwing it to the left, likely to work if they're going back for heals. Throwing it directly at them works if they walk forward. Oh, and this next bit isn't good either. So first of all, you're walking into a Junkrat, so you should know you're about to take a lot of damage. Oh, and just your whole enemy team in general, and you're kind of pushing the limits of your supports. I'd like to point out as well, if you haven't noticed, that your Baptistas had to use Immortality Field to not die, because the Junkrat bombs are going through you and hitting your supports. So they've already lost Immortality Field, they can't use it to bail you out right now. Now, I know why you're doing this. You're pushing up because you have ult and you want to use it. I already don't like that you're trying to use it here. This is too early. This ultimate is way better when used in reaction to things rather than running into the enemy team with it. Because if you run into the enemy team with it, not only does it not usually get a kill unless you get follow-up, and you're making it hard to get follow-up because you're going to be round the corner when none of your DPS can see you. But on top of that, it makes it really predictable what's about to happen. If an Orisa suddenly comes running into the entire enemy team, they kind of know that you're going to hit your ultimate. So, you know, it kind of is obvious. And lastly, even barring all that, right now, the second you see Immortality Field, you should just be like, okay, never mind. Because, like, this Immortality Field has just denied your ultimate. You at least got to break this before you press ult. But instead, you've already pressed Javelin Spin now, and you're already panicking, so you're like, I've got to run into them. And then the Orisa pushes you back with her own Javelin Spin, but you still stubbornly commit, unfortunately, and you run right in. You press your ult, and I'd just like to point out, you only caught 2. At the very least, I'll give you a very small amount of credit. I did see that you pressed Fortify before you pressed Ult, which gives you a second boost to your health. That is nice. However, you got practically nothing from it because the time before you let go of pressing Fortify and you pressing Ult was so short, you basically didn't get anything from that extra health. You probably used 4 of it. So that didn't really do anything. So not only did someone else have to break the Immortality Field for you, your DPS did, so that this all had even a slight chance of maybe killing one person. But on top of that, the enemy Orisa still has Fortify. You didn't force it out, so she can just hit Fortify to live this. And the Junkrat's full health, and also double pocketed. So, your chances of actually getting a kill here are basically 0, and the chances that this actually helps your team is basically 0, because your team can't even see what you're doing. And sure, they can walk around and they try to, but it's going to take some time, and in that time, they're probably just going to walk back and get full healed. So this is not great at all. On the other hand, imagine if instead you're playing this corner, and when they try and push around, you yoink them behind this corner using the ult and pulling them in, so that the enemy Orisa can't get line of sight to her supports for a moment. That has a better chance of working out, but unfortunately that's not what we do. Also, then you can get better use out of the extra health if you're using it defensively. I generally think that it's way better to use Orisa's ult defensively than offensively. Oh boy, and I'll just do one quick thing about this. Listen, I'm not going to grill you for missing all of your shots there. I'm going to grill you for the fact that you decided to try and take this flank, and yet the second you actually got a chance to kill the soldier, you instantly backed out. Don't get me wrong. like, I get it. You know, you don't know exactly what you're in for here, so you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But when you saw the soldier in this doorway, if you just threw your spear like this, you catch him. Because the first thing he does is he walks back like this. So if you just throw a spear at this angle, you catch him guaranteed. And if you catch him with a spear, maybe you kill him. But instead, it was like, uh-oh, scary, enemy, run away. But it's like, okay, well, if you were going for a flank, but you're scared of one soldier when you're full HP, like, what did you expect to see, you know? It's kind of like, what do you think was going to happen? Like, this is kind of the best case scenario for you, that you catch a soldier completely on his own, without any help, and the only way he can run is directly into your spear. And you kind of just run. You know? Like, I wouldn't even be mad at you if you threw your spear and you missed, or you threw it into the wall. Like, I get it. It's like, fine, whatever. Your aim might not be the best. I'm more mad that you didn't even try, you know? You still decided to go on this flank, but when you actually were at the point where you had to throw the spear to do anything with the flank, then you just ran. You know, it's kind of like, well, what was your plan there, you know? What did you think was going to happen? Anyway.